"Don't come to the rehearsal dinner, Dad. I don't want you there." She said it like she was canceling a dentist appointment. I was standing in my kitchen, still in my work boots, still holding the Tim Hortons cup I'd grabbed on the drive home from the hardware store, where I'd spent 3 hours helping her fiancé's father pick out deck materials, because that man couldn't tell pressure-treated lumber from pine if his life depended on it. I'd taken the afternoon off for it. I hadn't complained once. My daughter, my only daughter, had just told me she didn't want me at her own rehearsal dinner. "What?" I said. "That was all I could manage. It's going to be a smaller group. Just close family and a few friends. We're keeping it intimate. I'm your father." There was a pause on the line. Not the kind where someone is thinking. The kind where someone is waiting for you to stop talking. "Look," she said, and her voice had that tone I'd been hearing more and more over the past year, ever since she got engaged to Preston, a kind of careful patience, like she was explaining something to someone who was maybe a little slow. "Preston's family has certain expectations about how things look. His mother is very particular. You know how you can be sometimes." I didn't ask what that meant. I think I already knew. What she meant was this. I was a retired pipefitter from Sudbury. I drove a 2009 F-150. I wore Carhartt jackets, and I said "A" without irony, and I probably wouldn't know which fork to use at a table where there were 4 of them. Preston's family was from North Toronto. His father had a name on a building somewhere. His mother wore clothes I didn't know how to describe, except that they looked expensive in a way that made you feel bad for noticing. My daughter had moved to Toronto 6 years ago for work. She came back at Christmas sometimes. She called on Sundays, less so lately. And somewhere in the years between when I used to drive her to ringette practice at 6 in the morning and now, she had decided that I was something to be managed rather than loved. I told her I understood. I said, "Okay, sweetheart," and then I hung up and stood in my kitchen until the coffee went cold. That night I pulled out the folder I kept on the counter by the phone. It was one of those plain manila folders, nothing special. Inside was every receipt, every confirmation email I'd printed out, every bank transfer record going back 14 months. Because that's how long I'd been helping pay for this wedding. $52,000. That was my number. That was what I'd put in over 14 months. Because my daughter had come to me the previous spring and sat across from me at the same kitchen table and told me that Preston's parents were contributing significantly and that they'd found this beautiful venue in Muskoka, a lodge on a lake, the kind of place that charges $400 a person for dinner, and that she and Preston had stretched themselves as far as they could, and could I help? I said yes. Of course I said yes. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a wealthy man. I'm comfortable. I spent 35 years working the oil patch and the mining camps and every cold, ugly job in between because that's what you did. You showed up. You saved. My wife Lorraine passed 11 years ago, and after that I had one thing that kept me going with any real purpose, and that was making sure my daughter had every opportunity I hadn't. So I emptied part of my RRSP. I took the tax hit. I didn't tell her how much it stung because that wasn't the point. The point was the look on her face when she said, "Dad, this is going to be the most beautiful day." And I believed her. I believed I was part of that. After she called to uninvite me from the rehearsal dinner, I sat at the table for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and I sent an email to the venue coordinator. Her name was Trish, a pleasant woman I'd spoken with several times. I told her there had been a family change in financial arrangements and that I would need to discuss what deposits were refundable and what could be transferred. She called me back the next morning. I had paid the venue deposit directly, 40% of the total, $3,100. And under the terms of the contract, the remaining balance was due 90 days before the event. That balance was my responsibility too, as I had co-signed the booking agreement at my daughter's request, because Preston's family had wanted their name kept off the contract for tax reasons. I didn't fully understand, but had agreed to anyway. I asked Trish to put a hold on the final payment processing. She said she'd need something in writing, so I sent her a short note. Then I called the florist. I had arranged the flowers as a gift, not through my daughter, directly with the shop on Yonge Street that my daughter had picked out during a trip to the city in January. I put down a deposit of $900 on an arrangement package that included the ceremony flowers, the reception centerpieces, and the bridal party bouquets. I told the florist that I needed to pause the order pending some clarification. She was confused. I explained that I was the account holder and I was exercising my right to hold the order. Then I called the photographer. This one took longer. I had paid the photographer's deposit, $1,200, and signed the service agreement myself at my daughter's request because she'd said the photographer needed one responsible party's signature, and Preston didn't have a printer. I told the photographer I needed to discuss the terms of the contract. 3 calls. That's all it took that first morning. I didn't tell my daughter any of this. She didn't call that week. I didn't call her either. 2 weeks later, Preston's mother called me. I want to be fair about Lorraine, not Lorraine, Preston's mother, whose name was also Lorraine, which had always struck me as a strange coincidence. She was a composed woman. She spoke the way people do when they've been to a lot of meetings. She said she understood there might be some confusion around the financial contributions and that she wanted to make sure everything was on track. I told her everything was being reviewed. She paused. Then she said, "Reviewed by whom?" "By me," I said. "I'm the account holder on most of the vendor contracts. I'm making sure my contributions align with my level of involvement in the event." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'm not sure I follow," she said. "I'm not sure I follow," she said. "I'm not sure I'm invited," I said. "So I'm not sure why I'd be paying." She said she was going to have my daughter call me. My daughter called me 20 minutes later. She was not using the careful, patient voice anymore. "What did you do?" she said. "I haven't done anything yet," I said. "I've asked some vendors to pause some processes while I review the contracts. That's all." "Dad, the wedding is in 4 months. You can't just—" "I can, actually. My name is on the contracts. I have that right. This is insane. You're doing this because of the rehearsal dinner? Are you serious?" I said, "I'm doing this because when your mother was in the hospital, in her last weeks, I never once left her side. I slept in that chair by her bed for 9 days. And when she passed, you know what she said to me? She said, 'Don't let Nora grow up thinking love is something you earn by being convenient.' I've tried to live by that. I've tried to be the kind of father your mother would have wanted me to be. I have spent $52,000 on this wedding because I love you, and I wanted to give you the most beautiful day I could. And you called me to say you didn't want me there. Not because of anything I'd done. Because I was inconvenient." She was quiet. "I'm not blowing up your wedding," I said. "I'm just asking to have a conversation, face to face. Come home, or I'll come to Toronto, either way." She came home. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. Same table we'd sat at when she was 12. And I had to explain to her why her mother was sick. Same table where we'd done her homework, where I'd helped her practice for job interviews, where I'd signed the RSP withdrawal papers 14 months ago without once making her feel guilty about it. She looked tired. I could see she'd been crying before she got here, though she'd fixed her makeup in the car. "Preston's family thinks you're trying to ruin everything," she said. "What do you think?" I said. She didn't answer right away. She looked at her hands. "I think I've been really stressed," she said. "I think the wedding has been a lot, and I've been trying to manage a lot of people, and I've been trying to manage a lot of people, and I don't know. I've been listening to certain people too much." His mother? She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She made some comments, my daughter said slowly, about how things might look, about the guest list, about keeping it cohesive. She used that word, cohesive. And I went along with it, and I shouldn't have. I know that. I poured us both a coffee. "I'm not asking for an apology," I said. "I mean, I am, but that's not why you're here. You're here because we need to decide what kind of family we're going to be going forward. After the wedding. 10 years from now. Are you going to be someone I talk to or someone I hear from at Christmas?" She started crying then. Not the fixed makeup kind. The real kind. She said, "I don't want to lose you, Dad." "Then don't treat me like I'm worth losing," I said. We talked for 3 hours. About her mother. About the years when it had just been the two of us. and we'd figured it out together. About Preston, who she genuinely loved. I could see that, and I had no issue with Preston himself. The kid was decent. He just came from a world where fathers like me were a liability rather than an asset, about what she wanted her life to look like. Before she left, she hugged me in the doorway the way she used to when she was small, with her face against my shoulder and her arms tight around me, and I stood there in my front doorway with the November cold coming off the Sudbury bush, and I held on. I called the venue the next day and released the hold. I called the florist. I called the photographer. Everything went back to where it was, but that's not the end of it, because I had made my daughter a promise. Not out loud, but the way you make promises that matter, inside yourself, where no one can talk you out of them. And that promise was this: I was going to that wedding. Not to make a scene, not to embarrass anyone, but because I had earned my place there, and I was done pretending otherwise. The day came. The lodge in Muskoka was extraordinary, I'll give them that. The lake was flat and silver in the November light, and the trees had already gone bare. But it was still beautiful the way Ontario gets in late fall, severe and quiet and honest. I wore the suit I'd bought for my wife's memorial, navy. It still fit. Preston's mother spotted me near the entrance before the ceremony. Her face went through several things in about 2 seconds. Gerald, she said. She knew my name at least. Lorraine, I said. Lovely spot. She said something about needing to speak with the coordinator and excused herself. I found my seat in the 3rd row, aisle side, where my daughter had put me on the seating chart. The ceremony was short and genuinely beautiful. My daughter walked down that aisle and she looked at me as she passed and she smiled. Not the managed smile she'd been using lately, but the real one. The one I'd known her whole life, and I had to look at the ceiling for a moment. At the reception, Preston's father, a tall man named David who had the handshake of someone who'd given a lot of handshakes, came and sat beside me during cocktail hour. Jerry, he said. He'd shortened my name without asking, which was fine. My friends did the same. I understand you've been the one holding a lot of this together financially. I helped where I could, I said. My wife and I should have contributed more directly, he said. He didn't look entirely comfortable saying it. We left the arrangements in the kids' hands, and I think some things got handled poorly. They did, I said. I didn't dress it up. He nodded. We sat there for a moment. She talks about you a lot, he said. Nora. She talks about you a lot, he said. Nora. She talks about how you used to drive her to every practice, every game, how you managed everything after her mother passed. She was 14, I said. What was I going to do? He nodded again. My son is lucky to be marrying into that. I looked at him. He meant it. The speeches at dinner were what you'd expect. The best man who talked too long. The maid of honor who cried in the right places. Preston's mother who gave a speech that was mostly about the venue. Then the microphone was passed to me. I hadn't planned to say much. I had 3 index cards in my pocket that I'd written on at the kitchen table the night before. I stood up and I looked out at the room. Maybe 120 people, candlelight, the lake outside the windows, and I put the cards back in my pocket. I'm Nora's father, I said. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the one from Sudbury. There was a small laugh. Good-natured. I'm not going to stand here and talk about what kind of father I was because I'll leave that to Nora to decide. But I'm going to tell you what kind of woman she is. She is the kind of woman who, when she was 17 and I had a bad fall on a job site and was off work for 6 weeks, packed her own lunch every day without being asked so I wouldn't have to spend the money. She never mentioned it. I only found out because I saw her doing it one morning before school. I paused. She is someone who knows what it costs to love people. She learned that young, and she learned it the hard way. And what I can tell Preston tonight, what I can tell this whole room, is that if you are loved by my daughter, you are loved by someone who understands the weight of it, who takes it seriously, who will show up. I looked at Nora. She was watching me with her hands folded on the table and her eyes bright. That's all I wanted to say, I said, Welcome to the family, Preston. I mean that. I sat down. The room was quiet for a moment, in the way that rooms get when something real has just been said in them. Preston's mother was looking at her water glass. I didn't look at her long. After dinner, Nora came and found me near the windows overlooking the lake. The party was going. The band had started. She linked her arm through mine, and we stood there watching the water. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said, "for the rehearsal dinner, for all of it." "I know," I said. "I don't want to be the kind of person who does that." "Then don't be," I said. "It's actually that simple." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Out on the lake, a loon called once and then went quiet. That sound, that particular sound, on a November night in Ontario, will always mean something specific to me now." I stayed until the last dance. I drove home to Sudbury with the highway dark and empty and the boreal forest pressing in on both sides, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not vindication, not satisfaction, just rightness. The sense that the thing that should have happened had happened, that I had shown up, quietly and with my head up, and that it had meant something. My daughter called me the next morning from the hotel. Just to talk. No particular reason. Like she used to on Sunday mornings when she was in her first apartment and didn't know anyone in the city yet. We talked for an hour. Some things, once they're restored, are more solid than before. Like a bone that heals. Like a house you've repaired with your own hands, board by board, and know every part of. That's us now.